Yeah.
Going down the 101 freeway, there's a big billboard up there for gaming analytics. What's on it? What should be on that billboard?
It should say in big, bold letters, "You need this." Well, I'm Jim Mackie. I've been in gaming now for 26 years. I am the director of player development at the West Valley region, Desert Diamond Casino. That is the West Valley property and the White Tanks property here. Desert Diamond has 5 properties, 3 of which are in Tucson, 2 are in the North Valley in Phoenix. I am a veteran of the business, started very, very modestly, working in a riverboat in Cincinnati for Argosy and Penn National. I grew up in the Midwest, and I am now pretty much where I want to be. I've been everything in between, host, supervisor, club rep. I have been, interim marketing director. I've run the gambit. I've been happy every day of it, and I look forward to getting in the car and coming to work every day. I've been using gaming analytics for going on 2 years now. My host team consists of typically 19 people that are different levels of host, and it provides them with all kinds of information, intuitive and otherwise, that allows them to understand their book of business much better than anything we've had before.
Let's talk a little bit about the reporting that preps you for presentations to your board of directors.
Yeah, that's obviously the board of directors. I'm blessed by the fact that they enjoy my presentations, because it's usually always good news. Because we talk about revenue, and really the revenues here in this part of the state, based on location alone, it's magical. So yeah, I mean, I rely on gaming analytics pretty heavily to get me the information I need to be able to have a presentation that isn't only kind of in perspective with revenue and all those things, but also it gives me an ability to speak to, okay, my job here is to take care of the high-end customers, or the base of the customers that give us the majority of the revenue, and I can be creative with the information and the data that I can pull by myself without any help from anybody else, to create really cool presentations that show, when we have an event here, we can show the lift that of business, during those hours by which we do our player development VIP events, which, by the way, I believe that for this group of players, and I have a range of guests that get different levels of amenity, but I believe that everything we do should be more on the experiential side and not so much on the status quo of what marketing offers that go out in direct mail. So we try to create things that are one-offs that people just our customers have deep pockets, and can typically buy whatever they want. But some of the things that I can provide to them based on who we work with and how we work with, I can give them things they can't just go out and get, and that they love that. And when we do that, it drives tons of revenue. So not only does the gaming analytics give me that opportunity to do a deep dive into those events and present that to our board and my leadership, but it gives me an opportunity to be creative and look in deep dive into the database, into people that maybe aren't necessarily haven't been discovered as the level of play that kind of where they're hiding in the cracks, so I can go in and I can really do I can comb through so much data and find new business. We recently just I had a little extra time and I pulled up all rated play for a certain period of time, and lo and behold, I'm finding customers that haven't been discovered by the host team. And I think the number was like somewhere in the vicinity of 4,000 customers that really should have some kind of attention. And there were probably 1,100 people that came in on their first trip and played to a high level and hadn't been connected with. So that's the kind of stuff that really helps me. And all of this ends up going into a presentation at some point, and like I said, I'm blessed with the fact that the news that I bring to the board of directors is always, pretty good news.
So when you have these events, the VIP events, for example,
Right.
You're saying that you're providing the players with things they just can't go out and get.
Right.
For example.
Okay. For example, we do things with athletes. We bring, for instance, I don't know how much you're into baseball here, but Hall of Fame baseball players are readily available to me. So we'll bring those folks in, and we'll have receptions where in our VIP lounge where people can actually sit and talk to these guys and hear about their exploits. And that's special because all the guests is, we always have a drawing for cash. So we call it travel money and stuff like that. But it's fun. People come in. We have a nice banquet with great food. Typically, we'll do 400 to 500 people at a time with those, and then we'll break it down a little bit more over the entire weekend. So we'll have our VIP level event maybe on a Friday night, where our top customers are treated to a very nice banquet. The NCL reps are there. They get their certificates, which are always nice certificates for cruises all over the world if they can get themselves there. And then maybe the second night we drop down a level, maybe another banquet, and then on the third day, it's just the masses. Whoever qualifies can come in and pick up a certificate. This typically brings $5-6 million in coin in over the weekend. And now we're doing it not only here at West Valley, we do the same thing at the White Tank property as well. So that's a staple item that's very experiential for the guests. They enjoy it. They expect it. They can't wait for it. I work with colleagues in other cities. Actually, we're working right now to affiliate with properties in Vegas who I have long-term relationships with. To be able to send folks who want to travel to Las Vegas, but they don't have any contact there. So we set them up with a contact that I know and trust and have known for years and years, knowing that they're going to be taken care of when they go there. And, sometimes the folks above me are asking, why are we sending people to Las Vegas? Why are we sending people to Atlantic City? Well, they're going to go there anyway, and if I can make their experience greater than they could have had otherwise, I'm building loyalty with them. They're going to come back. They're going to be happy, and they're going to continue to be a great customer here. So all of these things start with the data that I pull from gaming analytics.
Yeah. So you said the words loyalty and the experience,
right?
Experiential. And how important that is for you to develop these relationships,
right,
with your players. And it sounds like you do have this. It's kind of a special way you approach it, but you've been around for a long time too.
That's true. I've been around for a while.
How many years?
Man, I started in 2000, and so actually I started in '99. As a club rep, and kind of grew from there at a riverboat property that was one of the back then it was an Argosy property, and that after I think they became Hollywood Penn Gaming a few years after I left. But yeah, I started on a riverboat, and I started as a club rep, then a supervisor in the club, and I think a year or so after that, the manager in that department gave me a dual title. I was a reservations supervisor for the hotels, for several hotels in the Argosy group. And then one day I was approached by one of the executive hosts who said, "You need to come on board with us." Because I understood that hosts needed hotel rooms, that was a very busy place, and hotel rooms were very highly regarded by the retail side. So, I was making sure the hosts got their rooms. And then, at one point in time, they just said, why don't you come work for us? And they set me up right away as an executive host. And then soon, within, a couple of years, I was working off property as a marketing exec. And then I was there for about 9 years, and then I went on to be. I went to another company, Cordish Gaming, who were building a new live property in Indianapolis, and they offered me a manager's job, and I went there and worked as a manager, and that's where I got my first directorship. And I was there for about 9 years doing the same stuff. Typically I would have also the Players Club under my, that would report to me. I did interim marketing director stuff, when we needed that. And then from there, I went to Boston and did a directorship there. At the time when I got there, the only casino in Boston, in Massachusetts, actually, was Plainridge Park. That was another Penn property. I was there for a few years. I didn't like the East Coast. And it was far from home, and I was traveling back and forth. And so I left that after about 3.5 years and kind of stepped out for a while. And then next thing you know, I'm getting contacted by property in California. It was San Manuel, which is a big one. They offered me a job. I accepted. And then I was contacted by this property during that licensing period with the California property. And they said, you need to come to work for us. And we interviewed, and they made a presentation to me, and I liked it. I was aware of this property and the enterprise, and it was keeping an eye on it because I could see they were moving quite fast into the Arizona market, and that's kind of the history of it. And here I am, but it's been a long, long-term career, but it seems like only yesterday.
And it sounds like a lot of this. Well, one is your background is marketing, but the thread that kind of ties it all together is the Players Club and being a director.
So I started in this business when I was 40. I think I was 46. Walked in clean, never even been to a casino. I had, and I don't tell people this much, but I grew up outside of Cincinnati. My dad was in the food business. He had grocery stores and meat shops, and I grew up the son of a butcher, and I took over that business and ran it for 20 years before I ever got into this business. And so what I learned in that business is customer service and, blue collar kind of, level tradesmanship. And I think that honestly that was not a very prosperous business, but it was a very difficult physically. And when I had the opportunity to move it and sell it, and really did well on that sale, I just wanted to get into something different. I wasn't really pressed for money or anything like that. And I just wanted something different, and something where I could interact with customers. And so I think that the background that I had gave me that ability to provide to customers that feeling of, okay, this is an okay guy. He understands me. He knows where I'm at. Because I could look at a person, I could tell, you're another blue collar guy, or I could look at a guy and talk to them and know automatically you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, or some kind of professional. But it allowed me to ascend and descend based on who I was interacting with, and I think that served me well. And the fact that I really enjoyed when I came into the business, gaming, because first of all, it didn't feel like work after everything I'd been doing, prior to that. And that annoyed a lot of people because I was always happy. And they're like, oh man, I just really hate this. It's so hard. And I'm like, you just don't have any idea what's hard, and so it's been a pretty good ride, and I'm going to stick around for probably 2-3 more years. I'm 70. I'll be 71 in October, and I still feel like I could go for another 20 years, but my wife doesn't agree. So
from what you described, though, you mentioned how some people say it's so hard, but it's almost like, from what I hear and what you're saying, you really enjoy what you do.
Sure.
With these relationships and chatting with people, and you reflect on your past and the experience as a butcher in what you call the kind of blue collar customer service. And what I'm hearing is, I like going. I mean, I think back even as a kid, the butcher was always a nice guy to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
We would stop by with my mom while she's grocery shopping. Just a friendly, warm-hearted guy. And maybe that's what you're meaning by that blue collar
Right.
customer service.
Yeah, I mean, you
no
knew.
matter how busy you are.
Yeah, you knew your customers. You knew their names, you knew their kids, you knew what was going on in their life, and whenever they came in, you could always say, hey Bob, how are you? What's going on? And all that during that time, you're processing their order, but it's very personal, and so when you're in that kind of a business, it's the only way that you can separate yourself from the other guy, the other butcher on, across the street. So, and it's the same way here. Every casino in this state has slot machines. Every casino in the state, most of them have table games. Same stuff. What separates us from somebody else is that level of service and, amenity too. And so, I have to be creative here because, we haven't got to the hotel yet. We still don't have a hotel. And so, I have to work with, I go places and create amenity. We have, aside from the fact that the enterprise already had, we're covered with sports and concerts and stuff like that. We have all those partnerships, but, but at the same time, I mean, we code about 10,500 customers to 19 casino hosts. We have a level of host for different echelons of customers, and that group of customers, based on typically when I run these reports in gaming analytics, I'm looking at all rated play. It can be 70, 80, 90,000 people that are rated. Our group of customers is typically about 7 8%, maybe sometimes less of that data, of that rated play. But it's always 60% plus of the revenue. So this is the most valuable group of people that happens at these two properties. And to take that a step further, honestly, this property, the West Valley property, supports the rest of the enterprise. So it's kind of a heavy thing on my shoulders. But the good news is that the business is here. We know it's here, and I know that because I use gaming analytics.
Jim, describe the events that are reserved for the high-end customers. Is that like when you bring in a Hall of Famer, or?
Well, we do, multiple things like that. And to be honest with you, when I bring in a Hall of Famer, I'm not talking hundreds of people. I'm talking very intimate, maybe 30 people, 40 people to get to sit with. I had Raleigh Fingers here. I don't know if you know the name. I had
from the Padres.
I had Wade Boggs here, Fergie Jenkins.
Cool.
Baseball's a big thing here, especially, we have spring training here. So, we work with that, and that's the kind of stuff I look for. And then we do
30 of your players. Are they your highest end?
We start at the top.
Okay.
Typically what I'll do is I'll tell the host, you have 2-3 spots to fill. Here's your list. I want you to concentrate on these guests. So at least in my mind, I'm trying to make sure that I'm covering the cost of the event, so sometimes I don't,
but you said that when you have these events, coin in goes up.
Coin in bounces up. Yeah. Depending on the number of people that we bring in. So we do little chef table events where the specific chef creates a meal for 10 people, and you bring in the top for those. Does that move the day? Probably not. But what it does do is it keeps those customers loyal, makes them feel and they get to do and enjoy something that's very, very special. When a chef specifically prepares a 3 or 4 or 5 course meal, rolls them out one at a time and explains what it is, and the whole experience of it. We do a lot of that. We do wine tastings and bourbon tastings and all kinds of things like that are not always available to your typical guest, and we're working on doing more. So I bring in entertainers. I mean,
you said when you have these great events, these great experiences, you said it all starts with data.
It does. It absolutely
does. Tell us about it.
Well, Brian can back me up on this because I lean on him a lot, because the technology sometimes it's interesting because I'll run queries, and in those queries I'll run them for weeks on end, and then all of a sudden the query changes or something changes and the query doesn't work anymore. So then I'm on the phone to Brian and say, hey, help me out, and he'll end up, he's literally in many situations, he said, like, hold on, let me run this for you, and I'll set it up and I'll save it for you, so the next time all you got to do is go in and hit the button. And that's great. And I love the guy. I've always loved the guy. He's one of the most intuitive, and from when I say that, I mean, he's got so much background in player development, and he knows, instinctively what I need. And sometimes I'm like, man, I shouldn't be bothering him with this stuff. But every time I have a conversation, the conversation's always more than just that. It's I feel like he's a friend, and I've known him long enough, that he really kind of is a friend, and that's a good feeling to me, because I know the guy's not going to let me down. But the technology always, our events, everything I do the story is always in the data. It's always the data. And when I create a lot of events that are sometimes, designed to do certain things. Like we have we're scored on we have service scores that we need to achieve on a departmental level. And for a while there, we were trying to figure out how can we get our scores up, because everything's tied to our incentive. The decision to bring gaming analytics to us, I couldn't do this with HostViz. I couldn't do any of this stuff. And I was always after not just hosted play, all rated play. Because there's a lot of business there that's we should be looking at. So what happens? I decided at some point that some of these drawings and things that we're doing, some of these experiences that we're providing, we don't just do it for our hosted customers. We do it for any customer that hits a certain criteria. Hosted or no, VIP or no. And this equates into revenue. This equates into us making a friend with a guest who's been playing here for a long time but never got any attention. It's when that happens. And honestly, our frequency with our VIP base is pretty high. I think the average for the base is like minimum 4 trips a month, sometimes 4 trips a week. And so when you touch a customer who's a mid-range customer that hasn't had any attention, but they're coming in, 4 times a month, they're solid. But now they're like, hey, wow, man, I get to go to this banquet. I get to be in this drawing. I get to play in this slot tournament. I get to get a cruise certificate. I'm somebody here at Desert Diamond. I'm not a nobody like I am at Gila River. So that's kind of the way we position it, and I've got, like I mentioned earlier, I have a level of host for every kind of customer. And
how does gaming analytics help make these events more impactful?
So, I mean, in all honesty, we need to know when we come up with a plan or a strategy or an idea. Okay, it sounds great, at the 50,000 foot level, it sounds great. Yeah, we can do that. But I'm not going to just pull the trigger on something without at least having some kind of an idea what the return's going to be. And that's where gaming analytics come in, because I can look at a period in time and I can say, oh yeah, this, typically I'll look at, 60 days worth of play when I'm trying to make a decision. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. But the technology gives me a feel for, what's that going to look like? And can I create incremental, if I got a customer that's coming in, say a frequent customer that's coming in 3 or 4 times a week, am I going to be able to bring another trip, or am I going to dilute, their gaming with another trip, or can I actually get incremental? So I look at that, and sometimes, yeah, I pull the trigger hoping for incremental. Sometimes I just pull the trigger because we need revenue on a certain day. We need to drive more business in on a certain day and hope for the best. But it all, there's always some gut checking that has to happen. And then I work closely with our CMO when we talk about these kind of things. The first thing he'll say is, how many people can we bring in, and what's the bottom criteria, and then what's it going to look like. So I can answer all those questions based on recent history. So and when gaming analytics first hit, I was pretty much of a novice, not really knowing the best way to use it. Went to the typical okay, gaming analytics going to send some trainers in, they're going to show us how to operate this. But I've always known that the best way to learn these kinds of technologies, get in and play with it and figure stuff out. And with knowing that I got a Brian there who can, spend time with me on a whatever I needed, he's always been available. You want to meet once a week? You want to meet once a month? We're to the point now where it's once a month, but believe me, there was a time there when it was once a week, and probably some phone calls in between. But it's just I mean, the basic answer for that question and all your questions is that that provides me with data, and I can tell it what data I need.
What you said, you have 19 casino hosts, and they're overseeing about 10,000 customers.
Yeah.
But you also said that you came in recently, or you were navigating through data, and you found players who hadn't been discovered, or they were missed by the hosts.
Yeah, because the hosts were focusing on their assigned customers. So, and this is everywhere I've ever been over all the years that I've been in this business. Typically, that's the way it works with the host. They wait for data. Now, I'm not saying they don't go in and dig, and they do, but I found that it's a lot more. To me, it's a lot more certain if I take a look at that, and then I provide that list of customers to the assigned host, rather than hope that somebody finds it. But the fact is here that we are very busy, and people are still coming into Phoenix. People are moving in here every day. So what wasn't here yesterday could very well be here today. So I like to take a look at that. And like I said, that one day I had a little time, and I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to take a look at what's going on here, and I start to see one-trip customers. A one-trip customer can be it can be just a kind of a situation where they came in, they got lucky, they won, they hit their they put up a good theo, and then they didn't come back. Maybe they were traveling through. Maybe they don't normally gamble. Maybe they just got lucky. But there were some pretty good numbers there, some pretty good theoreticals there, and it didn't appear to me that anyone ever reached out to them. Now the host told me, "Oh yeah, I'm aware of that. I called the guy." But when you got 1,200 of them on a list that had minimum $400 worth of play, that should be getting somebody's attention. And so now I can keep looking at that, and I'm working with. It's not just working with gaming analytics. I mean, we're working with Player Performance Group. And we take this information and we churn it, and we start to look at it, and they can take it another step and say, yeah, these are the ones that that we think that that we should be focusing on. And so it's kind of a collective. It's not just me. It's kind of a collective group that that we're working side by side, and on trying to get to a common point, which is, more revenue. And, but none of it, gaming analytics is also enjoyed by Player Performance Group. And, I think it's a really good partnership.
Is it working, Jim? Are the profits going up? And do you think you could tie that to gaming analytics?
I think it's a combination of things. I do know that, that, for instance, Doug, my boss, uses gaming analytics differently than I do. Our marketing team uses it differently than I do. I think to answer the question, the cumulative results are, we're driving revenue, and it took us a little while to get the White Tanks property moving, and I think this the product helped us a lot with White Tanks to kind of identify what needed to happen, and that allowed us to go in and pull the data and take a look at the customers that are paying. And, basically we're close together. We're only like 15 minutes apart, and people are playing both properties. So that gets a little weird when you're trying to figure out, which customer is going to want to come where. And so, that's another thing that, we've been able to do with the gaming analytics, is to be able to see, what's the primary location for these customers, based on things like where do they live, but other people just really like to come to one or the other based on the feel when they get there. So, but yeah, of course, the gaming analytics played a part in it, and I think in my regard, it's a very important part in making the right moves.
When you do the chef meal for 10 top players,
yeah.
Does gaming analytics allow you a little more confidence when you're selecting those players? Meaning, when you're organizing the event, you just feel more confident, and you're selecting only 10.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's almost, well, some of those, it's kind of a no-brainer. But what I try to get the host to do is not to go to the same guest every time. They've got their top players that they're very comfortable with, kind of their go-tos. I don't want those events filled every time with the same people, obviously. So this is why sometimes we'll cut out a list of the players, and I'm getting ready to do it again today, of people that are in that range where they're they have lower theoretical ADTs, and they have maybe lower frequency, and maybe some of them on the bottom, the bottom level customers on their list, they're probably not getting enough attention. So I will cut out a list and say, work this list, and I want to know who you're working, and I want to know what offers you're giving them, and I want to know what the results were when they come in and enjoy it. This is something that they're not used to. This is something that I've been working hard to get them there. Just recently, for the first time with most of the people on the team, they've never had a real formal training in player development. So I brought raving technology in for a 3-day session, and they learned some sales stuff. That they right now they've just been kind of huggers, and just keeping their customers warm, but not hunters. And I kind of want something in between. I want somebody that's going to keep their customers happy and warm, but also, hey, pay attention to what's going on in the environment, and let's start working closely with table games, getting the pits, and let's start working closely with slots. So we're setting up meetings now with both of those operations, so that the slots and table game guys are more comfortable with the hosts. The hosts are more comfortable with the slots and table game guys. It's a lot of breaking down a lot of silos, so to speak, to keep everybody tuned into what's going on around here. And but again, it all kind of stems from our ability to look at where do we need to focus.
Hypothetically, what if you didn't have gaming analytics tomorrow? What would happen?
um, I wouldn't be as it wouldn't be as easy to keep the board happy. I'll put it to you that way, because
Why?
I need to be able to present to them real live, results. And if I can't see, the one thing that gaming analytics does give me, and I mentioned this to you, is that I need to see all play. I need to see everything. And, if you take that from me, then I'm only going to be able to see the group of people that are hosted. And that's great. I can say, I can still set, some kind of plan or strategy, to continue that, but it doesn't give me any kind of an ability to see what else is going on out there. Where else can I, what other rocks can I flip and find, revenue? And also what I enjoyed really about working here versus everywhere else I've ever worked is that PD is pretty respected in this environment, in this enterprise, versus where other places where I've been, where, the tendency was that, the casino hosts were just, party animals that had, could comp somebody's stuff, but they really didn't have to work very hard. And well, that's not true. I mean, probably, there's an awful lot of responsibility on the host, and on top of everything else, anytime anything goes wrong, we're the guys that have to fix it. I can't tell you, it's almost a weekly basis. Something happens around here, some kind of a silly, thing that happens that shouldn't have happened. And then next thing you know, they're like, call the host. So we're a lot of times we got to go out there and fix that stuff.
Looking back at all your experience, how has gaming analytics made you more effective as a leader in your job?
Yeah.
How do you think it's changed
Well,
who you are?
I can tell you this, I feel a lot better about myself because now I can prove that, that the moves that I'm making with this operation is successful. Or I can prove that, hey, we didn't do so well. So that's sometimes the not knowing is uncomfortable. I like the fact that I can see what I'm doing. It's like, sometimes, you feel like you're driving with a blindfold before you have, when I would have ideas, but I wouldn't be able to back it up with anything, and this is important. I can tell you, I've had other things out that, supposedly would help me with these kinds of things, CRM products and stuff like that. Nothing works like gaming analytics. I think this is cutting edge stuff. The AI ability. It's a little. I mean, I could see where it could be used in a negative way. But I look at it as if I've been given something that's really, really special, and I continue to look for ways to use it. And I can tell you, I'm still a novice. I very much enjoy the conversations I have with Brian, he continues to show me stuff that I have never even scratched the surface on. But the fact that I can bring stuff to the table now that puts me in a better place with my leadership teams, the people that I report to, the overall respect that I get from my subordinates in my department based on my career. So now I can tie my knowledge, I guess, or you might say wisdom from being in the business for so long, to technology, and utilize that those two things to come up with something that's really, really productive. So I was thinking about this morning. I know I'm pretty good at what I do. I don't tend to be the best, but I'm pretty good at what I do. And I think that keeps me in a place where, I'm smart enough to know when I have something that's going to continue to give me that low hanging fruit that I need to keep everybody happy. And that's where this product helps me. And it's becoming almost instinctive, almost every day I'm jumping in and taking a look at stuff. I might look at, comparative times, between, for instance, quarters. When I look at, last quarter versus where I am in this quarter, and those things are things I never had before, or things that I could get, but I would have to wait for it. Get in line with our analyst and ask them to provide me with this kind of information. But now, I have access to it immediately.
It's almost like you have your scoreboard, right? It's in your back pocket at all times.
Yeah.
I wonder, Jim, the more you talk, the more I feel that you're just having fun. You said you're going to be 71.
Yeah.
You have a kind of this vitality of a younger, you sound like you're having fun. What I'm wondering is, when you come up with all these ideas for campaigns and kind of these creative ways to keep the relationships warm and stronger, I wonder if you have more autonomy now, because you've been able to go to your board of directors and show them results instantaneously. Are they to the point almost now where they just say, go do it?
Yeah, yes, I would agree with that statement, but there's always a budget. But here's the thing with the budget. My budget is blown almost a day after they give it to me. As long as what I do, pencils out, and pretty much always does, they are very happy. And it's really cool. I think that you're right. I do enjoy it. I've always enjoyed this line of work. I left it for a short time when I left the Penn property in Boston, and I helped a friend of mine scale up a business in Indianapolis for it was 5 or 6 months. And then I just took a little time off because I'd been in the business for a while, and I kind of needed to decompress a little bit, especially after being in Boston. That was a rough gig. But the fact is that I couldn't wait to get back into gaming, but I really needed it to be the right place. Somehow I was able to land a position here. It was almost serendipitous. It was. Sometimes I feel like the Forrest Gump of gaming. I feel like, here I am, the son of a butcher who never finished college, and I'm working in a director level position in a multi-million-dollar company. It's just like, how does that happen? But the products that you guys provide is just, to me, and it's a necessity. It's a necessity to keep growing, because it's also not the easiest thing to do, to keep coming up with strategies and plans and ideas for ways to keep our customers from defecting. Here's what I can tell you, and you probably know this or have heard this, is that when I started the business, people were very loyal to the gaming operation they were with. They hardly ever would stray. But then came marketing, more and more intense marketing as more and more casinos sprung up. And in Indiana, where I started, we went from 6 to like 15 over a period of about 8 years. And it became a war. The competition, was always out to come after your guest. And that's over the years has become, people are our customers are going to go. They're going to go to other properties and they're going to enjoy those offers. It's up to us to keep them coming back. I don't blame people if they get a $500 offer from one of the competitors to go there and take it. So these are the things these are the strategies that we have to work on to make sure that, okay, let's not lose them. Let's keep them. What do we have to do to bring them back? And this kind of starts more above my pay grade with my boss, but I'm always involved in it. I focus primarily on my job with the customers that I take care of. And that needs to happen. But I love being part of the solution when we have these conversations that typically before I ever came here, I wouldn't have been a part of. It would have been a decision made to go in a certain direction, regardless of player development. Here, player development plays a key role. And I understand the responsibility that I have, because it's not just working for a casino in West Valley. It's working for the casinos in the Valley that support the entire enterprise, that supports 30,000 people on reservations spread out across the state and into Mexico. So,
Jim, you said you have about 80,000 rated players.
At any given time, it can range from 50, 60, 70,000 to over 100,000.
Okay.
It just depends on, it's seasonal.
You said 7% are hosted.
6 to 7%, yeah.
And they account for about 60% of the revenue, the hosted.
Of all rated play.
Okay, and how many VIP players do you have?
How many hosted players?
That are VIP?
Minimum 6,000.
And then what's happened to the revenue with the VIP segment since using GA?
Well, I can tell you this. I think that level of customer comes in regardless. But, that's a hard question to answer without having some data behind it. But I can tell you this. When we do these events, I'm often asked that, okay, well, those customers would have been here anyway. Maybe so, maybe not. But what I can tell them is that when we launch an initiative that's meant to drive a trip over a certain period of hours on a certain day, I have technology that I can show the actual lift in business that corresponds with that 3 or 4 hours where that event was actually executed. So, I would say this, I wouldn't be able to do as well without an ability to pick the right guest for the right strategies or events. So it's priceless. I mean, it's something that absolutely makes a difference.
You said earlier that it makes you feel better about your job using gaming analytics and having that data with some confidence, I believe, a greater confidence. You're able to make decisions more informed.
Yeah.
How else do you think gaming analytics has impacted, let's say, for example, your host team in regard to how they view their job?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a two-way street. We have given them this great technology so they can see exactly what their players are doing. It's intuitive, it's predictive, um, and so what does that do for me? It allows me to set goals that are somewhere between aggressive and but achievable, so that they don't get complacent, because they will get complacent without a little nudge now and then. Um, but I can tell you this: I know they're utilizing the technology. I know they're seeing what their guests are doing. Um, and now, since the training session that we did, it's been early March when they had that 3-day training, and they learned some skills in the training, and I can see that they're starting to put those skills to work, and I can now, um, uh, we do a weekly host report that they have to do, that basically says, um, what are you planning for this week, um, as far as your sales work. Are you making calls? How many are you calling? What level of play are you looking after? And that's one part of it. But then there's another part of it that says, okay, what you promised last week, what are those results? You said you were going to bring all these customers in, blah, blah, blah. Now tell me what they did. And then I can take that a step further, and say, I want the names of 10 people that you're going to contact this week from a list of players that I just gave you. And I want you to get them in here in the next 2 weeks. And then I want to know who those people are. And then I have another section. This is all in one report. Okay, of all those people I asked you to bring in last week, how many came in and what did they do? So I'm making them think about sales. I'm asking them, how many trips did your base drive in Q1, and how many trips are you at currently in Q2? So they can see whether or not they're bringing in more trips or not. I'm making them look at that.
It makes them more accountable. What I'm wondering is, one, has it in fact created your core host team being more impactful, more loyal to you? And the ones that don't like having this form of accountability, have they deflected and naturally moved on?
Well, nobody's moved on. I can tell you that. They may not necessarily like the chores that I give them. They understand why they're here, and they're here for only one reason: that's to put butts in seats in the casino. And I've made it very clear to them. I think they respect me for it, but honestly, I'm here to bring revenue for the enterprise. So I will, if I need to, I'll get a little bit more assertive. But I do believe that, at the end of the day, they respect me because I'm protecting their job. And they make okay money, and they have a nice bonus plan. And from what I've done in this line of work, it's not the worst gig to be a part of. I've worked salary jobs where I was asked to work 10-hour shifts, sometimes 7 days a week if they needed, and that was just, you just did it. The hosts have a very, I won't say it's comfortable, because we do a lot of stuff. They do have to come in sometimes on their day off. I send them on assignments off property to go to football games and baseball games and concerts and things like that. That's kind of a perk for them, that they'll host a group of people, at one of those events. But there are a lot of them, and it's not uncommon to hear a host say, "Ah, man, I got to go, host a group at a concert tonight," because at the end of the day, it is work.
Do you think that using gaming analytics for some of your hosts, it's really empowered them?
I think it's the best product that they've ever seen in terms of knowing what's going on with their base of business. And the way I present this to them is that you each have your own business. You have a thriving business that I'm giving you. Your job is to keep it thriving and grow it. And so the report that I was just mentioning to you that starts with what was your revenue last week? What was your revenue this week versus your revenue last week? And it calculates it, and it shows them whether it's a red number or a black number. And okay, so business will fluctuate. People come and go and cycle. And, here we are in Phoenix, where pretty soon people are going to head back somewhere else to get away from the heat. But I want them to see it. I want them to see, last week we had an event and the numbers were nice and black, but what about those days, those weeks where we don't have events and all of a sudden you're seeing some drop? What are you going to do to keep that from happening? If I don't give them this report to complete for me, they're not going to see it. And the only way they're going to get the answer to the question is to dive into gaming analytics and get it.
Do you have some that just love it? I mean, for me, I love that, being able to measure my output and productivity and put a number to it, like a scoreboard. Do you have maybe a few that just love it?
I have some that have embraced it, and I have some, and this is always the less established host that maybe this is their first gig in gaming. Maybe this is their first job as a host, who look at it like, oh my God, I got to do all this stuff, but yeah, you got to do stuff, but you got the best tool to do the stuff. And it goes back to sometimes you don't realize what you didn't have unless you actually had to work without it. So these guys have had it dropped in their lap, and they're like, I don't, I feel like that there's both of those things that you just mentioned. I think there's the ones that are thinking, man, this is really cool. And they're diving in there and they're looking at every angle. And then there are the ones that they're still learning and they don't understand, the importance of what it is. And so that's why, I have to, sometimes it's like wringing, the water out of a towel. You gotta make them do it. You have to make sure they understand it. And that means in a lot of cases, training, in a lot of cases, frustration when, you go over this stuff time and time again and they're still not picking it up, but that's my job, and that's what I do.
I know we're kind of hitting toward the tail end here, Jim. I want to respect your time. Before we end our call this morning, pretend, for example, somebody in your role at another property, one of your peers, they're just doing things the old way. Mm-hmm. What do you tell them?
If it were to arise, obviously, I would speak highly of the technology, and I would probably say, hey, whatever it costs your enterprise, you need to let them know that it'll pay for itself, quickly if you have the right people to use it. But for your host, absolutely, it gives them, it's so predictive, so intuitive. That's what I would say. I would say, it provides information for not only for your host, but for you that you probably never had before. You'll probably see now a whole new group of customers that you need to take a look at. And just
Mm.
I know this for a fact. I mean, it's something that it's something that is so powerful. Um, and like I said, I haven't even scratched the surface of what gaming analytics can do. So if I can be this happy now with just the way I use it, I can't wait to see what it's gonna look like for me in the next couple of years.
Jim, two more questions. One, just want to make sure: are there any ROI? Are there any numbers you can share that you feel have been impacted by GA?
What I can share is that here's what I can tell you. I can see ROI better than ever before because I can utilize this technology, and it puts me in a place where I can be comfortable when I say we introduce a new kind of promotion for VIP, and we execute it, and I see the first time out that it's come back in highly profitable, and so we can feel good about executing another one, planning another one. There's hardly ever a time when our ROI isn't good, even before gaming analytics. What this does, though, it gives me an ability to even fine tune, kind of what I'm looking for before we ever execute a plan. So it's more for me. It's more. It's an ability to be more confident, knowing with solid data that this is going to work, because sometimes it doesn't pencil out, and then that's when I'll pull it off the table. So that's the best answer I can give you on that.